focus placed on technique as the highest importance of everything, it was just a huge eye-opener. Quality over quantity every time.
That's the way I talk. I mean, you're at the seminar, like that's everything. And,
I love that.
I think every athletic. Welcome to the Muscle Intelligence Podcast. I'm your host, Ben Pakulski. I recently traveled to Australia and had an incredible opportunity to tour around and meet some of the country's greatest athletes, some of the country's greatest coaches and influencers. And this gentleman has become known around the entire world for being one of the strongest human beings on the planet. And not only that, his intelligent approach to getting really strong has taken him to new heights. He is now training the strongest man in the world, as well as many other of the world's strongest men. Today's guest has a very unique approach to getting strong, very, very different than what many of the world's top experts are speaking of. Sebastian Oreb, otherwise known as the Australian strength coach, is today's guest. And I absolutely love this conversation out of his base gym in Sydney, literally called Base Gym. It's an awesome place focused around getting absolutely insanely strong. And why Sebastian's approach is so unique is he actually takes a minimal effective dose approach. And I know a lot of people out there are promoting many different approaches, and none of which, it seems, are talking about minimum effective dose to get maximum result. And you guys know when I talk about hypertrophy, that's what I speak about, right? It's not about maximum recoverable volume. It should be about minimum effective dose to get the maximum response. And I love that Sebastian is the guy who's now able to coach the top guys in the world. And he mentions some really, really big names as for people he's coaching. And not only that, how he approaches getting them really, really strong. Some of the biggest setbacks you're going to experience if you're trying to get strong, and some of the biggest mistakes people are making when it comes to getting really, really strong. So if you want to integrate strength into your current hypertrophy program or just into getting really, really strong, this is a really, really insightful podcast with Sebastian Oreb from Base Gym in Australia. I know you guys are going to absolutely love this conversation. If you do, listen right to the end, leave us a review on iTunes. As always, I love hearing from you guys. Enjoy the podcast with Sebastian Oreb. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Ben Pakulski, and we're sitting here with the Australian strength coach, Sebastian Oreb. What's up, brother?
Hey, man. Thank you for having me.
Dude, thank you for inviting me into your gym. And I just got a quick little deadlift session in there with Dr. Shallow, which was awesome. And I'm really grateful to be here. I've been watching you from a distance for a while. Obviously, training Hap Thor was kind of a huge thing for you. He recently just did his first powerlifting meet, or if it was a meet, or just
it was his meet. Yeah, it was the Thor's powerlifting challenge that he held in Iceland, but it was an official event. And for the people that like to get technical, he has done powerlifting competitions in the past. I think it was like 9 years ago. He had a few, little small shows, but a lot of people are actually considering this was his debut. Yeah, that was the most recent event at the end of last year. It was great.
Sure, and it'd be easy for us to dive into Hap Thor, man. But more importantly, I want to talk about you, because obviously to scale to the level you have, both in business and strength, and obviously becoming trainer of many of the greatest powerlifters in the world. I'll talk a little bit about your past. Like, how did that begin? You're obviously a very young guy. You're very healthy, very fit, extremely strong. And I'm very curious about strength, as I said to you transparently. I just want to know, like, where did the passion for strength come? Because I know to be as good as you are at anything, it's a passion. It's not just, hey, man, I'm gonna try this one day and start lifting some shit and hopefully it works. It's like I'm extremely passionate about something, and I've dedicated my entire life to that. How did that begin for you?
The beginning was very different to how you'd expect. I was, just trying to impress a girl, really. Many years ago. That's my wife now. We've been together for I think 17, close to 18 years.
Oh, wow.
So that's where it all started. I was just a skinny little guy, and I needed to put on some muscle mass, and it never started with the pursuit of strength. It started with wanted to look good. And, from there, I just, I tried different sports. I got into martial arts and things like that. And then I wanted to be successful, and I started thinking about ways of incorporating that into and making money at the same time. And I wasn't good enough at martial arts to make money off it, so I knew some professional level martial artists, and I offered to train them to get strong. And by accident, I became the guy in the area, the local guy that was known for training the pros, only because I knew them. So by default, I had a great reputation of training professional athletes. From there, I just thought, well, if that's a reputation I've got, I better be good at it. And so I just pursued it, and I went all in. And to go all in, I had to quit what I wasn't as good at, which was, martial arts. So I stopped, fighting, which is probably a great move because I don't really like fighting too much. I've met a lot of and trained a lot of high level fighters who have been forced into retirement with brain damage, and it's a really sad thing. So, looking back, it's a great thing that I got out of that because I value my brain, as I'm sure most people do. But from there, I kind of just wanted to be good, and lucky for me, everything turned out right. It was kind of unplanned, the way that we opened our gym, the way, like I said, I kind of fell into it. I built the reputation of training pros. And from there, there was not really many other people at the time that were training pros. So the next professional athlete came to me, then the next powerlifter at the highest level. And then it just built from there, and right place at the right time with the right product.
So a lot of things we talk about on the podcast is like building a successful life. And you said so many little golden nuggets in there that hopefully the audience is queuing in on. Like, in order to focus on becoming the best at something, they had to cut away at so many other things. There's a lot of lessons in that, man, because I know so many of us are trying to find what we're good at. And instead of focusing, everyone's kind of sticking their big toe into 30 different things and never allowing themselves to really succeed. Like ultimately you created success because you committed, you went all in. And so this is when you're the best at it, and you've created it.
Interestingly, I've had a lot of advice from people to say you should do this and that. You should do focus on fat loss because that's a great way of building money. And it's like, well, that's not what I'm interested in, and that's not what I like, and that's not what I'm good at. So why would I focus on that? I'm quite good at this. So I went all in, and again, that was by default. I just wanted to do what I wanted to do. I wasn't stimulated thinking about fat loss or nutrition or anything like that. Like, for those who know, my forte is strength, and that's it. And if you want to, hypertrophy advice or to get on stage, don't come to me.
Right.
I'll send my guys your way. But if you want strength, that's I've gone all in.
Yeah, very, very cool, man. So you're extremely strong, and I'd love to give the listeners just kind of like some mechanics of. Someone comes to you and says, Sebastian, I want to have a world-class squat. Let's say, I decide I'm gonna come out and do a powerlifting meet. What does that look like, man? Where do you start, as far as programming, as far as what are your first thought processes with a new client? Obviously, you're going to go assess what they do, assess what they've been doing in the past, but then I'd love to just kind of pull it out of your mind and how do I get really, really strong?
So, something, if anyone works with me, they'll know that my highest priority with anything is technique.
Has to be.
So, everyone's got all these loading parameters and the magic program and what's your best rep range and set scheme. No, it's technique. So, we mastered the basics, and that's the first place I'm going to look. If you want it to be good at squatting, we'll go and squat. And I've got a lot of tricks to get people to squatting at the highest level that I've learnt from the best squatters in the world.
What is a great squat? What does it mean to have a great squat? Like, what are the things you're looking for?
Well, no one starts being the best. I can see when someone's naturally, got the body type, big legs, big glutes, big midsection as well,
Sure.
So that absolutely helps. But if you look at me, I don't have really much of that. I got skinny legs, and so that's not the only thing that I'll be looking at. It's the movement patterns, and we use all the tools that we have. These days with powerlifting, it's not just the tools of your own legs and strength. We've got equipment, we've got external equipment, so belts and knee wraps, and that's something that I've mastered as well. And it's not just about mastering that movement. It's about staying injury free, not going to fail every session, not beating yourself up too much. something that I'm known for amongst my athletes, especially, is the amount of work that we don't actually do. A lot of people work hard, and I don't believe that's the answer. And I coming to your seminar last week, I loved hearing that about you, because I wouldn't have thought that coming from someone at the highest level with hypertrophy and aesthetic focus.
Well, I think the hard work has a place, but it's not your first solution.
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely. But I always, whenever someone asks me that question, I say, that just applies to strength. But I love to hear that it just applies to being successful in all fields.
Well, in anything, right? Like running faster and faster in the wrong direction isn't going to get you where you want to go is one of my favorite quotes. And working hard, great. But that's kind of the idea of focus, right? Like, what are you focused on? Are you focused on the right things that are going to move the needle the most? Or are you focused on something that's not? Like in strength, if you're doing too much volume, you're breaking down the CNS, you're depleting glycogen, you're probably stimulating MPK, all these things that are going to be negatively impacting the growth process, right? So, you're on the right track for sure, man.
Yeah. So working, especially with the level of athletes that I've been working with, a lot of it is by luck, so the guys that I know, these guys are freaks, like Hafthor, he's, for the guys that talk in pounds, 440 pounds, Alex, the God Simon, he's 400 pounds. Like, these guys are really big guys. And
how tall is Alex?
He's 6'3".
Wow.
So
he's 25.
He's 25. Jeez. I think he could even have just turned 26. It's hard to think of a number of his age.
But he's not like 40.
He's not 40. He's a young guy, and he's just, really, really gifted guy. And these are the types of people that I've been lucky enough to bring my way. Whatever it is that I've done, a lot of it's based on, I just said, right place, right time with the right product.
Yeah, man, that's the story every successful person tells themselves, right? It's not the truth. It's like, well, it's not, right? You've created something great. You've created a great reputation. Like, I've only heard great things about you, how committed you are, how you're just a great person, how you actually care. And those things are what draws those people to you, because people, myself included, everyone's always like, hey, what can I get out of that person, right? And it doesn't seem like you're that kind of guy. You actually care about someone. And that in itself, as an athlete, is potentially the most valuable asset of any coach. So
thank you. I
give
appreciate
yourself
that.
some credit, man.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. But definitely, there's a lot of care factor for everyone that comes in my team, everyone who walks in the door at my gym. And I know that's also some of the feedback that I've been given as well. And it's something that I've learned from a lot of great mentors that I've had is how much they care for their athletes.
Yeah.
And I see that as, beyond academics as a huge part of the success for a lot of the highest level athletes in the world.
Build them up, man. Build them up. They need to know that they have a team. They need to know they're supported. I mean, that in itself, from a performance perspective, is massive, right?
Yeah, huge role.
Yeah. As a bodybuilder, like, if I don't have a support network, I'm going to fail. Like, I need people who care about me, who think I'm going to do well, who support me. And in those hard times, they're the people you lean on, right? Yeah. For honesty or for an objective view, right?
Sometimes you don't get the honesty, but that's right. You need all of that.
Right, but that's why you're a great coach. I don't know, but I'm going to presume you're just able to be honest with people, man. Like, hey, man, we need to be real about this, and that to me is the foundation of success. Is like, how can I have someone around me who's going to tell me the truth? And for myself during my bodybuilding career, not that I want to go down the path, is like, I was the person who was honest with myself. I was my own worst critic, and that's why I was able to be successful. Like, I didn't really have a lot of people around me who were critical of me or hard on me. Like, very few, but I had some. And looking back on it, those are the people you value most, right? And I think in our society, people are very afraid to tell people the truth, because they're afraid of what they're going to say. They're going to get ridiculed. They're going to cause a fight. But I think that may be the foundation of success for everybody. I
love hearing this from you, because I know that you're here asking me questions, but there's so much that it's the world of hypertrophy and aesthetics and Olympia level bodybuilding. It's very new to me,
right.
And you're the highest at that level that I've ever had the privilege of being able to speak to. And there's so many things that I would have thought weren't parallel with my field, and now I'm just learning so much. It's just so much we have in common. I teach people to be their own harshest critic with everything, because so many people just want to give you a pat on the back and just say you're doing a great job, but that's not always the answer that you want to hear.
Yeah.
And that's again, that's not academics. That's coaching ability, and that's a lot of the time it can't be taught.
Right.
And it's a huge part of success is the way that you deliver information as well as a coach. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes if you're just critical and you're just breaking someone down, they don't want to hang out with you either.
Yeah, for sure.
So there's a fine line with the delivery of cues and the delivery of the honesty. And that's a big part of coaching as well, as getting along with your athletes and that type of team morale.
So I just walked into your gym and, let's say hypothetical situation, I'm going to be working with you. I want you to make me a 900-pound squatter. Yeah. And you will look at my mechanics. It's okay. Where do we start? Like programming wise, nutrition, where do you dive into?
Something, with my rule with everyone, I don't care if you're a 1,000-pound squatter or 500-pound squatter, you need to earn the right to add weight to the bar. There's videos now I've been watching of Hafthor, and it makes me actually proud. He's working with Larry Wheels, and he's helping Larry. He's helping Larry, and Larry's got his finger in every pie at the moment, and it's great. Sure. He's doing a lot of profile building, and he's working with the strongest man in the world, and it's fantastic to see. He's challenging himself in something new to him, and he's learning from Hafthor. And Hafthor is an athlete, and he says to me, I'm not a great coach. I just know how to do these things. That's why I need a great coach, so I don't have to think about it. But I've been watching what he's doing. And he is actually a great coach by default. He's teaching Larry to hold back. And this is what I do with Hafthor, is I hold him back a lot of the times because, people just want to, I don't know if you know much about how Larry Wheels lifts, but the guy is an absolute freak.
Yeah, I know he is.
And through social media, my impression of him is that he comes into the gym and just goes balls to wall with everything and lifts all the weights, and something that I was just observing with Thor, with coaching Larry is, he's got plenty of time. There's no rush. Take your time. We've got the competition at this date, which is in however many weeks or months down the track. We don't need to be lifting that weight now. We need to be preserving our body and staying injury free. Right. And gradually teaching ourselves how to handle those loads. And there's so many different overload techniques. There's a lot of great guys that I look up to in coaching. One that comes to mind is Chad Wesley Smith, for example. Yeah. Fantastic reputation, fantastic athlete. And, he's something that he's known for saying is working hard is working smart. And I look at everything that he talks about, and he is huge on volume and huge on workload and huge on getting a lot of work done. And for me, it's like, oh, man, it's so exhausting. And my system is very different to that. For me, I've learned from really, really strong guys who don't do that. They don't beat themselves up that much. And I've been able to develop a lot of guys, like I am not my strongest athlete, far from that. I've got so many of my athletes that are well beyond my strength. And which is why I like to be an athlete as well, is to get a little bit of reputation and to be able to empathize with my athletes. You
can't be a great coach unless you do. Like I really think believe so. You have to feel, especially in a sport as specific as yours. Exactly. It's like, if you've never squatted, how the hell are you going to teach it? If you've never done a snatch, how are you going to teach it? Like, you've got to feel. Yep. It's not like mechanics is bullshit. Like, you can read in a book all you want. And, like, it doesn't mean anything, right? That's why the greatest coaches are people who have a little bit of academic knowledge and a little bit of practical knowledge, and they put them together, right? Or maybe a lot of both, but the practical knowledge of it.
Well, that's right. So regardless of who you are, back to the original question, if you want to get a 900-pound squat or a 1,000-pound squat, where do I start with you? You have to earn the right to add weight to the bar. I've had many sessions with the strongest guys in the world, literally, and they're lifting less weight than me in the session because they're not ready to add weight to the bar.
Define what that means.
So, for example, I was over with Thor, at the start of his powerlifting competition. He's currently his last squat session was 290 kilograms for sets of 2. That guy squats, over 1,000 pounds. My squat is 200 pounds less than that. Yet in my program, I'm squatting 660 pounds or 300 kilograms, and he's doing 20 pounds less than that in his program. He's far stronger than me, but he doesn't need to be lifting that amount of weight right now.
What's the logic and reason?
Well, it's not burning himself out. Well, there's many reasons. One, he doesn't have a squat in his next competition. He's training for the Arnolds, and I like to, with his programming, I've got a lot of things that I'm planning for. So he's got another long-term goal, and that is to take the world's powerlifting record, which does involve the squat. But right now, his next competition isn't a squat. So I'm incorporating that lift into his training so it never falls too far away from his skill level in the squat, so that when he does eventually come back to squatting for powerlifting competition, it's not a new exercise again. So I'm going to be keeping that in the background the whole time. So that's one big reason why he's not squatting heavy, because he doesn't need to right now.
Makes sense. When will he be going for the world strongest man?
It's a hard thing to keep up with Hafthor, because he's got,
so
we don't like world's strongest man.
Sorry, I said that incorrectly. When is he going to do the strongest powerlifter?
So that's how I took what you just asked. But so the world's strongest man is in May. We don't know what the events are in that.
Right.
So I know that eventually he will want to have the world record in powerlifting. If that's not an event at World's Strongest Man, it will probably be, if squats aren't an event in the World's Strongest Man, it will probably be at the end of the year. So maybe in October, he may come to Australia for Big Dogs, which is, I guess it's now known as the best competition in the world for powerlifters for the heavyweights.
Really?
Yeah, they've got the reputation for having, the biggest, podium finishes. I believe the last top three were all 1,100 kilogram totals and plus, which is, that's record breaking. No one in history has ever done that. So that's the one that, a lot of people are saying Thor needs to step up to that level if he wants to be seen as the best powerlifter in the world, as well as the world's best strongman. But the thing with his competition, we don't know what the events are. World's Strongest Man, no one knows what the events are. Right. And we'll probably learn, there's rumors that come out, but we'll probably have all of the events confirmed maybe about 6 weeks out from the show,
right,
which is just crazy. I mean, the conditions at the World's Strongest Man at that level, you'd think it'd be a little bit more professional, a little bit more, a bit better organized, but it's just not. Like from a powerlifting perspective, powerlifters, they're elitists. They know what lifts they have to do.
Right.
They practice specifically for that event at the highest level. Strongman, this is going to kick up a bit of a fuss here, but they truly are the strongest men in the world.
Sure.
A lot of powerlifters will say, well, they can't squat, bench press, and deadlift as much. But if a powerlifter had to step in the world of the strongman, man, they got 10 days straight of competition.
Right.
A powerlifter, myself, if I do a competition, I'm done.
Gassed for 3 days.
For more than 3 days. I'll take a week off training, and when I come back, everything feels heavy. My body is beaten up.
Right.
These guys, one day they'll have to do, 1,000 pound deadlift.
Sure.
And then the next day they have to go and do more
reps.
events.
And I think there's something to be said for the ability, World's Strongest Man is you have to be strong at everything. It's not just good at three specific skills. And I think that would maybe why they wait. I don't know if they do it on purpose, but they wait so long to tell the events. Yeah. Ultimately, I want you to be the strongest guy in everything.
Yeah.
Because that person should win. If you know the events and you get specific and train for them, and then it's not just about being the strongest man. It's about being the best at these skills and then being the strongest man. So
Absolutely.
I understand. Yeah.
But that's my strategy with training him as well is sticking to the basics. So my training technique. So back to the original question again of how am I going to get you strong? It's the basic movements, and I use a barbell is just a tool to get someone strong. There's many other tools. There's dumbbells, there's machines, and my favorite way to get a body strong, regardless of your goal, whether it's to be an MMA fighter, a rugby player, a powerlifter, a strongman, is to master the basics with the barbell, to gradually progress you to be able to handle the heaviest loads possible without injuring yourself and without burning yourself out. And if we can do that, the person who stays injury free for the longest will be the strongest.
Sure.
And that's proving to be the case in time after time again with a lot of my athletes. Everyone just keeps on getting stronger as years go by. And I take a lot of pride in that. I'm doing an Instagram story at the moment. I do that every Wednesday, and someone wrote a question: when was the last time you failed a lift? And I thought, okay, I do remember when that was. And I went back and it was, I failed a 330 kilogram deadlift attempt last August. And that was in the lead up to a competition. And that was a little bit of poor planning, but I just don't miss reps. Not because I'm so strong I can lift all the weight. It's because I plan to not lift so heavy that I'm going to miss that rep. I plan to do everything a little bit lighter than what I should be able to do. And that's for good reason. You don't need to beat yourself up. You don't need to train that hard.
So that's a great topic. Is that about just the whole stress on the body, or is it about not, like, it's pretty obvious that if you're constantly training near that 100% max effort, skill at some point is going to start to deteriorate. It's going to start to break because you're going to have to instill bad habits. Every time you're towing that line, your body, something's going to start breaking.
Yep.
So is your thought process there, like, not breaking the skill, not breaking the body? I'd love to just walk through why.
All of that.
Above, yeah.
So technique is number one. You break down technique, you're increasing risk of injury. And if you're breaking down technique, you're teaching the body how to do the wrong things. Every time I touch a barbell, whether it's an empty bar or the heaviest weight possible, I'm treating it the same way.
Yeah.
So if I'm going for a max lift, for example, I'll approach that empty bar with the same focus. I'm obviously not putting as much force through the bar as when I'm lifting the heaviest weight, but I'm thinking about that top weight. And when you break down technique, that's not what happens. So there's, breakdown of technique. You're teaching your body the wrong things. You're increasing the risk of injury. And, lifting beyond your max, increases the amount of recovery time required. Of course, if you're smart about that, every now and then if that happens, it's not that much of a big deal. But the way that I used to train, and some of my mentors in the past have taught, regular maxing out, breaking down technique, it's fine, try it again. And this is coming from, I'm not sure how into the weightlifting you are, like Olympic lifting. But these guys, the Bulgarian method, for example, I'm not sure if you've heard of John Bros. That's someone who
very much.
I loved his work back in the day, and I learned a lot about his technique back in the day. That he used to advocate the Bulgarian method, but with his spin on it. And he's got some, he trained a guy called Pat Mendez. You probably also know who he is.
Yep.
These guys are phenomenal athletes, and that's probably what ignited my passion to training this way, watching what he did. And these guys were all about maxing out daily. And I've even read somewhere about, failing a lift, you can attempt it up to about 9 times before you should, throw in the towel for the day. And that's what I used to do. I've done that before. I've missed reps, and it's like, okay, let me try it again. And I've sometimes been successful, but this is like, I look back on that and I think, I hold my head in shame thinking,
sure,
whoa, that's not good.
Well, yeah, I guess an age thing too, right? Like when you're young, you can get away with a lot more, man. And you start, and it's also like, who is it? If somebody's squatting 1,000 pounds plus, you're not going to allow their body to be under that type of load repetitively. But if someone's squatting 250 pounds, maybe a different thing, right? Relative to how
back then, that's what my level was. I wasn't strong, so my squat was around the 500 pound mark, and so that's probably why I was able to get away with a little bit more. But nowadays, wow, all of our athletes that we're wrap us in cotton, and we're quite delicate with our approach to recovery and looking after ourselves. We'll approach maximal loads. I don't even know when, just maybe as we're approaching the competition. I like to compete 2 times per year. So I'm approaching maximal loads probably about, 2 to 3 weeks before competition. And then competition day, obviously. So of the year, there's probably about 4 or 5 weeks of the year that I'm peaked to be lifting that level.
Right.
The rest of the year, I don't need to be lifting as much. And if I continue to try and lift that much all year round, I'm going to beat my body up too much. And, that's the thing. You don't need to, this is a problem with social media as well.
Yeah, you got to hit a PR every day or PB every day, right?
Exactly. And it holds a lot of people back, except for the smart people.
Talk to me about volume and frequency. I'm very curious how you approach those two issues when it comes to, getting super strong.
Yeah, so if people put all of their trust in me and gave... I was able to take charge in their programming. At this stage, most of my highest level athletes, they're quite strong at elite level. I like a 4-day split with my training, just to put a basic system on somebody's training. I like to, let's just talk about powerlifting. I like to bench press 2 times per week, and I like to train my whole upper body with my bench press sessions. I like to squat once a week, and I like to deadlift once a week. People come up to me and they say, but I like to do a higher frequency than that. That's fine. So I'll be able to work with those people and say, okay, we'll add a day if we need to, but we need to now lower the intensity. The intensities that I like to work at, I believe that 4-day split really, really works well. And I use that.
So only training 4 days a week?
I train 4 days a week. Sometimes I'll train multiple times in that day. So for example, today I'm going to train again. I did bench press in the morning, and I like to spend all my focus on the main lifts and going, relatively high intensity, never till fail, but relatively high intensity. And then I like to eat, relax, come back and do my accessory work in the afternoon. So that's 2 sessions in one day, but I still consider it a 4-day split. And that's coming from speaking with the highest athletes in the world, speaking with the best coaches in the world. When I say the highest, I said highest athletes, the strongest athletes in the world from sports like strongman and powerlifting. For females, I like to increase the frequency, increase the volume, and increase the intensity relatively.
Do you feel like they can recover more?
Absolutely. It's based on size. It's based on the amount of weight they can lift. They've got less muscle mass to recover from. And they can recover a lot quicker. That's basically it. So if you're a girl and you came to me to train at the highest level, we've got one of the highest level athletes that are training in this gym at the moment. She's an aesthetics fitness model. Her name's Hattie Boydell, and she trains 6 days a week. If it was up to her, she would train 7 days a week.
Right. That's how I was when I was competing, man.
Yeah, well, it's hard, It's a big head game. I don't want to say it like this, but I just have to. Everyone at that level has a little bit wrong with their brain.
Oh, sure, yeah. We're all insecure. We're all messed up. No question.
Not just the insecurity. There's probably a lot of that as well.
Obsession.
But the obsession. There's something wrong with you to want to be that good. Like, go and spend time with your family. Go and do normal things.
Yeah, I know.
But what we do, it's not normal.
Right.
But that's fine, and I like that. When a new person comes to my gym and someone says, "Oh, watch out for this person. They're a little bit messed up in the head." It's like, what do you think I am?
You're part of my breed. You're part of my team. Yeah,
exactly. It's lift dependent, the frequency and the volume and the intensity. But then we've got things like, it depends on how far away from the competition you are. Like, for example, in my off season, I love training actually. And I like to increase my frequency because I want to be in the gym. I live in the gym. This is my workplace, and it's a really cool crew. And I'd rather be out there training with my friends than sitting in here doing office work.
Sure.
So I increase my frequency for up to 6 sessions per week. And when my frequency is that high, my intensity is all the way down, and I'll go in and I'll do the big lifts, but with really, really reduced intensities. So it's basically technique work, and I'm always working on technique. Something that I loved about, and I'd love to pick your brain with this as well. You spoke about, 5 movements for each exercise, and doing it right.
Yeah, 4.
And you said, and the only reason you choose 4 or 5 is because people get bored of 2.
Yeah.
I'm with you with that whole 2 exercises per movement. My exercise vocabulary is quite low. It used to be a lot higher, and we used to be a lot weaker.
Sure.
And the more specific and the higher the focus on skill that we've had, the stronger that we've gotten.
Sure.
And the answer. A funny conversation I had with a good friend. The smarter you get, the more you realize that the correct answer is it depends.
I don't know. Yeah. Yep.
So, if you're just about to step into, competition phase, the last 8 to 12 weeks of a competition, I like 4 days a week. And even still, it's not deadlifting. So I say, deadlift once a week, squatting once a week. And that's not deadlifting and squatting as heavy as you can once a week. We'll undulate that depending on the level of the athlete. If you've got a great squat and you squat if I've got squatters that are doing 800, 900, 1,000 pounds in that week, they're definitely not going to deadlift that same amount in that week. We need to deload. So guys like Hathor, guys like Alex Simon, it's heavy week, light week, heavy week, light week.
All 3 lifts will be heavy. All 3 lifts will be light.
Yes and no. We have to kind of get a 3-week split.
Sure.
It depends.
Yeah, of course.
So we've got a 3-week rotation, because if you go, heavy week, light week, you'll end up still having back-to-back heavy squat with a heavy deadlift, and that doesn't work. So, I don't know if people are going to have their pen and paper out right now listening to this, but let's just say we do a heavy squat. The next session has to be a light deadlift.
Sure.
And then if we just go heavy squat, light deadlift, heavy squat, light deadlift, we never give attention to the deadlift.
Right. Now talk about, just quickly, like when you say heavy versus light percentages, are you going like 40% on a light day, or 50%, 70%? Like what do you consider a light day? Or is it light?
I never really go below 50%. 50% is probably a little bit too light.
Yeah.
I've worked with a lot of people. I kind of like the number of 70% to 80% for our light work, and we decrease the volume as well. So, you know, let's just talk about, you know, relatively, we should be able to do 5 reps of about 85%. So I'll get you to do 2 to 3 reps of about 75%. So the volume's decreased, and so is the intensity, but it's at a weight that you respect, and you can still practice the right technique. If the weight's too light, it doesn't have the same carryover to the top weight.
Yep.
So, you know, heavy squat, light deadlift. Then the next session has to be a moderate squat or a lighter squat so that we can now factor in a heavy deadlift.
Sure.
And then, of course, after the heavy deadlift, we can't go straight to a heavy squat because we're too burnt out from the heavy deadlift. So it's a funny thing. If we've got a 12-week prep, you may only get 4 to 5 heavy deadlift sessions and, 4 to 5 heavy squat sessions.
So one thing you said in there that I want to pull out is if you a good powerlifter should be able to do 5 reps approximately with 85% of their max load. What if they can't? Like, what if someone comes to you and is relatively neurologically inefficient? I love to go, like, how do you progress them to get
it's no big deal, actually, because I don't really care if they're good at 5 reps.
Okay.
I care if they're good at the single,
sure.
Especially if they are a powerlifter. You know, working with strong men, everyone can develop the skill. So a lot of people, you know, there's a lot of tests out there where people, you know, get your max weight and then drop it to 75 or 85%, see how many reps they do, and that way you can determine, you know, if they're slow twitch or fast twitch dominant.
Right.
You get good at whatever you train.
Exactly. That's glad you know that. I'm slow twitch. No, you're not, man. Just change your training for 6 months.
Exactly.
Fast twitch.
Exactly. So, you know, depending on what the competition is, when I'm dealing with powerlifters, they have to do 1 rep. You know, in strongman, these guys are doing max reps.
Yeah.
So, you know, the last competition that we had with Hafthor, he's doing, it was, you know, 800-pound deadlift on an axle bar. So anyone knows the difference between an axle bar and a normal bar. There's no flex in it. It's really thick. It's further away from your center of mass. Mechanically, it sucks.
Yeah.
So to do 800 pounds for reps, that's really, really hard. And, you know, I basically know what it's going to take for him to win that competition. I look at the people that he's up against. At Europe's Strongest Man, he did 6 reps on that. And we trained for him to be able to do 8 reps. So, you know, where in a powerlifting competition, we train you to be really, really efficient and really great at doing a max single, having the skill to do a max single. You know, every 2nd to 3rd week, I'd have him do, you know, 8 reps because that's the number that we're going for in competition. Just so happened that it just took 6 reps to win the competition. Right. And you see he did 6 reps and, you know, had his hands up in the air.
Yeah, exactly.
While the other competitor, which happened to be a guy called Zydrunas Zaviskas, who one of the greatest strongmen of all time, was still completing his reps, but we'd already won it with 6 reps. But regardless, you get good at what you train. And if I want you to be good at 5 reps, I'll train 5 reps. And if you're not good at doing 5 reps now, I don't care because we'll get you there.
Yeah, very, very cool, man. How much are you looking at, like, with Thor, with any of your athletes, how much are you looking at recovery modalities? Because that's very interesting to me, right? It's like these guys are pushing the central nervous system harder than probably anybody on the planet. Yeah. I'd love to know, like, what's those off days? Are you having intervention with these guys, or are you?
There is, and it's all about training morale. It's like, for me, it's like, what do you like doing? You know, I let people do what they like to do. If you want to go for a walk, that's great for you. That's going to be good for your body. It's going to be good for your soul, whatever you like. Yeah. Hafthor likes things that I don't know. I don't have, you know, evidence-based, you know, literature to support what he does. He does a lot of hot and cold therapy. Yeah. He swears by that. And, you know, I'll sit with him. And whenever I go and live with him in Iceland, he forces me in that cold tub and I hate it. But you know, here's the rationale. He says to me, you want me to listen to you in the gym? You need to listen to me here. Amen. And that's what I do with everything. Yep. It's a mutual respect. So he forces me in that cold tub and, you know, I don't disagree that it's going to increase the recovery, but I'm not 100% sold on it either. Right. But I'll do it anyway. It makes him feel good, and I think there's a lot to that. You know, there's a lot of other topics, funny articles that come to my mind. Nookie or no nookie pre-game time.
Sure, yeah.
And you know, my answer to that is I don't know.
Nookie all the time.
Well, that's it. You know, if it doesn't make you feel good.
Yeah.
Something interesting. I came into the gym one time, and you know, there's a few things that I try not to do before I'm going for a heavy lift. And one is that, nookie. Yep. The other is, you know, high sugar meals because, you know, the big energy spike and the crash, I want to be performing optimal. So I came into the gym one day and a friend said to me, you know, what are we doing today? And I was disappointed in myself. I said, I was just with my wife, you know, and we had, you know, cuddle time.
some private time.
And then she made me pancakes afterwards. And she said, what's wrong with that? And I said, well, I'm meant to be doing a heavy deadlift today. You know, I don't know if I'm ready for it. He said, well, it sounds like you've had a pretty good day so far.
Light it up, man.
And it kind of changed my mindset right there. And I ended up having a good day.
Right.
So a lot of the recovery methods based on just morale, how does it make you feel? Does it make you happy? I weigh up, what are they actually doing? A lot of people talk about stretch sessions, yoga. Like, is that actually great for recovery? Well, it depends. How does it make you feel?
Yeah. What are you used to, right? Like if you're used to having sex every day before you train, then you better have sex every day before you eat. Like, exactly. Don't do anything different is one of the best things that you can do for game time. Yeah. And everybody seems to think it's going to take away your power. But like, I think it may be worse for you to be distracted. If you're used to doing it all the time, all of a sudden you can't think about what you're trying to do. You know, I mean, that's a real thing. Yeah. Very interesting, man. So, you know, moving along, I think there's a lot that needs to be learned here as far as how to ultimately become super, super strong. And one piece that we haven't really touched on is mindset. And I don't know how much you're kind of coaching these guys as far as that stuff, but it sounds like you've kind of got a hand on getting them super focused. And how much does that play in? So one thing that I talk a lot about is like the state of mind that you take on when you're coming into the gym is a big part of being great at anything. I'd love to have you talk about, you know, how you're, for yourself or for one of those athletes, how you're kind of steering that ship.
Yeah, so that's something that's it's forever changing as well. It's exhausting to be highly focused for a 2-hour training session when you're lifting the heaviest weights possible. It's exhausting. So that's probably the hardest part. So something that a lot of our strong lifters will be able to relate to. You know, you'll do a big set of whatever it is. You know, let's just say a set of 5 reps. I had an athlete, he did 5 reps on 700 pounds. No, it was more, whatever 340 kilos is. I believe that's about 750 pounds.
Probably more than that.
He squatted that in 5 reps. And, you know, we spoke about it, and it wasn't actually that hard. But could he do another set? No, he couldn't.
Right.
What was exhausting? Prepping for that. Wrapping the knees, sitting there, getting his mind ready to be able to do it.
The anxiety of,
that anxiety is so exhausting.
Yeah.
You know, that's right. The adrenaline dump.
Yeah.
This is a lot of things that people don't factor in. You write down on paper, he's just done 1 set. It's a lot more than that. Mm-hmm. So, you know, the mindset leading up to that, it's a hard thing, you know, getting ready for a competition, you know, the neural arousal in the gym versus the arousal in competition, they're very different circumstances.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And that's a huge contributing factor to your overall fatigue after competition compared to your fatigue after a training day.
Right.
So, you know, a lot of great coaches also factor that in, and they'll have, you know, like a high arousal day or, you know, very excited in the gym versus, you know, completely relaxed. I know a lot of, you know, there was a big comparison with Eddie Hall and Benedict Magnusson when those two were training for a 500 kilogram deadlift. And I was watching it very, very closely. A lot of people, you know, sent me messages. I'm on there's a part where Eddie Hall actually deadlifted 500 kilograms and the video goes straight to my face in disbelief. I think I'm saying something like, fuck.
Right, yeah.
It was amazing lift. But, you know, leading up to that, I was watching Benedict Magnusson training and I was watching Eddie Hall training. And one of the biggest differences between the two, they're both lifting similar numbers in the gym. But the arousal that came from Benedict Magnusson's training session, if you watched it, it was just magnificent. I loved it. Just how the mindset that he had, he'd attacked this weight like a raging bull, and it was just phenomenal to watch. I love it. Eddie Hall was not the same. He was relaxed. He was, you know, making jokes and he was, you know, whatever the practical jokes that they have on their friends, slapping them around the head and all of that. And they were both lifting the same weights. But then when it came to competition time, that's when you need to be that aroused. That's when you need to be that excited. Eddie Hall won. He was able to switch it on to the level that he needed to be where it counted, and that was in competition. Yeah. So, you know, the mindset, it's a huge thing. As it gets closer to competition time, you need to be, I believe you need to be prepared for these things. So when my highest level athletes are in here, I treat them like, you know, I nurse them like my children. You sit down and I do everything, you know, and that's a big part of the care factor that I have with a lot of my athletes. You know, I won't talk to them and I won't let them, as it gets close to competition, of course, I won't let them talk to other people as well. I won't let them be bothered. If someone new comes to the gym, I'll put my hand up in their face and say, don't come this way. We've got something important happening. And that's a huge part of the success is, you know, when we talk about care, the amount of care that goes into the session. But if you do that every single session, you know, 12 weeks out from a competition or in the off season,
it's exhausting.
Man, that's exhausting. Yeah. And it's not enjoyable either.
Right.
So it's the training morale. You have to enjoy what you do. If you don't enjoy it, you're not going to want to do it.
Dr. Jordan Shallow and I were talking about the autonomic nervous system and how you can learn, like you're talking about that day of the competition, how exhausting that one rep is, or those, the entire day is to your body. And, digging into the possibility of intervention strategies, like, subjecting yourself to that high amount of sympathetic stress, and then figuring out a way to kind of calm your body down and subjecting you to, again, so ultimately you're kind of increasing the volume or the amplitude of the sympathetic arousal that your body's used to being subjected to. That's what lifting is, right? It's like, today I did 900 pounds, tomorrow I'm going to do 910, and like or next week I'm going to do 910, and progressing my body, my body's ability to recover from that, and then your perceived exertion is much lower. At some point, 500 pounds for you was very, very hard, and like your stress was massive. Now 500 pounds, you could probably walk out there cold and do it, right? Same on a bench press. So thinking of ways to allow your nervous system to recover faster so you can do it more often and ultimately drive that sympathetic arousal higher. I think that's the ultimate hack in training here.
Definitely. And that's, I did hear you speaking about that before, and it's like something that intrigues me as well, because I don't have the evidence for any of these things. I think by accident.
You have to track.
Absolutely. What works. And as you said, with the mindset, it's forever changing with our strategies. Not based on evidence, but based on what works for the individual. What do they respond to best? But a lot of the things that I do, someone's probably done the study on, and it probably works for some reason.
For sure. And if they haven't, they will soon, because it's people like yourself who are the ones that kind of the trailblazers, people will see what you're doing and they'll go, we should study this. And then in 5 years, it'll be reality, or 10 years, it'll finally come out,
Exactly. So many times I've had interviews with people and they say, oh yeah, so that's that study that was done. And it's like, I didn't read it. I've been doing it for a while.
Exactly.
I
don't read studies.
Great.
Yeah. One thing I'm curious about is how much are you paying attention and measuring time around workouts and between sets? Because I think as a strength athlete, some people, you say it's very important that you're taking 3 minutes or 7 minutes or 10 minutes, and some people just go, I go when I'm ready.
Yeah. I'm pay very much attention to how many minutes between rests. So for myself, 8 minutes is my magic number, and that's not based on science either. That's based on, if it was to do with science, I've heard of a lot of measures of 4.5 minutes to get the full neural recovery, and I used to base everything on 4.5 minutes. I just had that number in my head, and then it came to a point where it's like, okay, in competition, for a powerlifting competition, in between each lift, it's more than 4.5 minutes, and I was freaking out because I'm a creature of habit in so many ways, so I had to teach myself to change that and kind of extend that 4.5 minute period for 1 or 2, get used to randomizing that rest period. So I've tried a lot of everything. So that's the magic number that I've come to, as a minimum of 8 minutes rest for all of my top sets when we're at our heaviest weights. And I'm talking about myself as a 220 to 242 pound guy. That's my usual body weight. So that's 100 to 110 kilograms, lifting the amount of weights that I'm lifting. And up. So guys that are, my size and heavier and stronger respond very well to that amount of, a rest interval between sets. One day I had a session with Eric Lillybridge where he wrapped my knees and he cared for me and he did all those things. I was squatting for his seminar, and my best squat at that time was 330 kilograms. And I needed to break that with him standing behind me for the audience. And I was prepared to break it by 5 kilograms, so to go 335. I ended up doing 350 kilograms. So it was a huge PB, and it was easy under his supervision, under his rules. And his rules, he extended me to a 15-minute rest between sets. And I was looking at him going, I'm just going to shut my mouth because you're Eric Lillybridge. Even though I don't believe you, I'm just going to do as you say. And it worked. So it kind of changed a lot of the things that, 8 minutes, everyone says, but I'm going to cool down after 8 minutes. Like, you're just not at these levels.
Or you can choose not to, right?
Exactly.
Like, what are you doing between sets? What's your brain doing? What's your body doing? And that's
it is mainly the brain.
Question.
It's the brain, the neural excitation while you're sitting there. What are you thinking about? But when you're lifting those levels of weight, the amount of stress involved, it keeps you warm. And anyone who's lifting those weights will know that. When it depends on how how new you are to the game, how new you are to lifting heavy. So many times I've told someone, rest for 4 minutes, and they'll say, man, what do you want me to do? Go to the shop in between?
It's like cardio, yeah. Oh, it's too long.
No, it's too long.
Yeah.
Like this is newcomers. If I said 4 minutes to my strong people, they would say cardio.
Right.
But this is, like as you're teaching the body to, and that's, as you said, if you wanted to train me to get a 900-pound squat, those are the things that I would factor in. You got someone like, and I'm saying her name because she's here now. It's relevant. Hattie Boydell. When I first met her, she's, training to be up on stage in a fitness model competition. And, her regular rest periods was 60 seconds. And when she first started training with me, the first rest periods that I gave her was 3 to 4 minutes, which is very short for me when we're lifting heavy weights. And she's looking at me like, I'm probably going to stop training with you soon because I'm not enjoying sitting down for the whole session. I kind of wanted to train.
Right.
But then as she got stronger and stronger, she started realizing, and that's one of the biggest strategies in getting someone stronger, is teaching them how to rest in between sets. Because if you're teaching yourself to hold back and to do 5 sets or to do 10 sets, you're teaching yourself not to give everything in that one set. So that's something that I learned a lot of through, working with the Lily Bridges.
Yep.
A funny story, he did a 500-pound deadlift challenge. He posted this on Instagram. This is Ernie Senior. And he came out and he posted on this thing, 500 deadlift challenge. 1 rep, did it right the first time, no need to do any more. That's their whole methodology, is not the volume approach, not the high frequency, not the working hard approach. It's do it right. Eric Lillibridge posted a video of him doing a 1,000-pound squat, and someone wrote on there on his Instagram page, dude, where's all your volume? All the good guys are, doing so much more sets and reps and all of these things.
Right.
And his response to that was, how many of those guys are squatting 1,000 pounds? None of them are. The guys that are squatting 1,000 pounds don't do that excruciating amount of volume. And
the amount of stress to your nervous system is massive.
It's huge at those loads, and it's a huge focus. And that's where they're huge mentors of mine, especially Ernie, who's the coach, Eric as well as the athlete, but his father, Ernie, I spent a lot of time with him, and just the love and attention that he gives. It's because it's his son.
Sure.
But when if you detach that and just call him his athlete, it's like this is a huge part of the success is the love and attention that he gives him, and the focus, the
endeavor, right? Like you can't be a 100-meter sprinter unless your form is perfect. And, it's the idea of you have to learn to crawl, then walk, then maybe light jog, then a fast jog. And like, that's the progression everyone needs to walk. Exactly. No matter what your skill is, it's all a skill. Yep. One thing that Jordan talked about at our seminar, which you may or may not have heard, was this really interesting concept behind every tissue in the body ultimately having a different recovery time. So, your muscles will recover in 3 to 4 minutes. Your nervous system may be 4 to 8 minutes. And then your soft tissue may be much longer than that. So your tendons, ligaments, and joints, and those are all really interesting considerations that most people don't think about. And so if you're someone pushing the limit of a squat under 1,000 pounds, your soft tissue may be the thing that doesn't recover. So the idea of lower volume to me at that level makes a tremendous amount of sense because if I'm squatting those soft tissues, there's no question those are going through a massive amount of trauma. And if I haven't trained them appropriately, or if I'm doing too much volume, those things haven't had the time to reset. And that's definitely a very big part of actually completing the skill of squatting or deadlifting. The idea that tissue has to be recovered too. Otherwise, joint laxity is going to be increased. The likelihood of injury is going to be increased. That's a very interesting thought. So what are you thinking about, after a set? So I'm just walking through it in my mind, just something that came into my mind. Body position, I think it's maybe overthinking a little bit, but body position between sets, like am I standing, am I sitting, am I laying down? Because I'm thinking if I'm going to go try to deadlift or squat and I'm sitting down on a bench slouching over my phone, I'm putting my spine into this rounded position. Now maybe I'm creating a little laxity in my spinal extensors. That's very interesting. Like so many things that could go into this. Ultimately, my brain just overthinks things.
I think exactly the same as you.
Exactly. So what body position have you ever, what do you do?
Yeah, I hold an upright torso angle because, with a good posture, because exactly that.
As we both sit up in our chair.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Every time you think about posture, I'm sure everyone listening to this at home will probably do the same thing. You sit upright. Yeah. But, in between all of my sets, I don't let any of my athletes slouch, especially if they're going to be loading their spine. I work very closely with very intelligent rehabilitation professional. His name's Dr. Andrew Locke. You know, he's a physiotherapist, and he's taught me a few things about disc fluid and in between, the importance of extension. So there's a lot of research by a guy called Ruben McKenzie, who does a lot of McKenzie press ups. I don't know if anyone's heard of those things, but it's putting the spine in extension, to neutralize disc fluid. And this is a recommendation of his is before each lift is to do a few just extensions, look up, put your hands on the hips and extend your spine, and that will neutralize. He said it's like an OCD of his, but he knows that'll change the disc fluid slightly and decrease the likelihood of disc injury after loading his spine. So that's something else that I think about as well as sitting in an upright position.
Not loaded, just literally like standing, like extending.
Not unloaded, definitely unloaded. Don't force yourself into.
So when I say loaded, maybe it's like on a 45-degree back extension with a little bit of resistance.
Right. No. I'm sure that would work as well. But yeah, just sitting down, just with your body weight and gravity, and that's all.
And just one time, or flexion extension.
Just one time he does before his reps. That's his little OCD that he has, and that I've taken on as well because there's logic behind it.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, sitting down, there's a lot to be said. Whether you could say it's the proud pose, the mindset and what that represents when your chest is dropped and you're looking down, and the confidence and all of those things. So I've spoken with mindset guys that talk about holding your chest up as it teaches you to win kind of thing. It's the winning pose.
Chest up, shoulders back. Jordan Peterson, man.
Right.
Step one.
So there's that. And for me, I have that in the background saying, okay, I don't know if that's true, but it's not going to hurt.
Yeah.
But absolutely, it is more to do with the joint integrity is to sit there with an upright posture, especially when the spine is going to be loaded. Yeah, we don't slouch in between sets.
No laying down on the ground or anything like that.
I don't mind laying down on the ground, but it kind of that for me is just, it changes the mindset too much. You're a little bit too relaxed. You're going to switch right off. I like for people to sit up and have a little bit of focus and have a little bit more attention to what's going to be happening next. But yeah, laying down on the ground is kind of like that's switch off pose. Same as I don't take my belt off in between sets. I don't take my wrist wraps off in between sets. I loosen them, but they stay on.
Right. I used to take my belt off completely because I wanted to use every time I put that belt on, it was like my anchor to turn the brain on. Yeah. And another thing I used to do that I loved, and something to think about because you live in an awesome city and an awesome gym, walking outside between sets, like getting some sunshine, getting some fresh air. That for me was always my best. Not when I was bodybuilding, when I was doing my quote unquote powerlifting early in the days. If I could get outside, see some sunshine, get some fresh air, get some really deep breaths, I feel like that helped my ability to get back into that focused state. Because we're humans, we're meant to be outside, right?
Yeah, sure.
Get connected with nature, get that like sunshine in your eyes, wake you up, maybe increasing your dopamine or something like that. That was always a really cool strategy for me. One thing I want to dig into a little bit more is nutrition. Like, so you've taken these guys to get to become the strongest in the world, and obviously nutrition is a big part of it. And maybe starting with pre-workout, like what are you eating?
So the thing, my biggest struggles with nutrition is compliance.
Sure.
And it's the same with everything. You'll whatever you like doing, you'll do better more frequently. So if ever I've tried to take complete charge of someone's nutrition, it very, very rarely succeeds because there's a lot of things in there. It's like they'll say to me, just write out whatever you want me to eat and I'll eat it. The first thing they do when they get that piece of paper is,
do I have to eat this?
Exactly.
I don't like this.
And it's like, I don't want to do this anymore. So I'll a lot of the times work very closely with nutritionists where there's someone that's taking charge of their nutrition.
Sure.
But failing that, it's kind of like the one step at a time. So I'll get someone's diet. I'll use, one of my strongest guys, yet worst eaters. He'd come in, his name's Vasa. For those that are listening, this guy, he's got over 1,000 kilogram total in powerlifting. He squatted 420 kilograms. He bench pressed 600 pounds.
Wow.
Deadlift, I forget what it was about 340. That was his weakest lift of the three. Really strong guy. He'd come into my gym at 6 p.m. and I'd say, first thing, what did you eat today? I haven't eaten yet. It's like 6 p.m. What do you mean you haven't eaten yet? No, I'll eat tonight when I get home. What do you mean by that? Well, it's just what I do. What are you going to eat? I'll get a barbecue chicken and some rice and I'll eat that and, a 2-liter bottle of Coca-Cola. And I look at these guys and it's like, how the hell, like what you could be if you took a little bit of, care in what you're putting in your mouth. So someone like that, I can't change him completely to, 5 meals a day or whatever it is. I can't give him a complete overhaul because it's too different to what he's doing currently. So it's step by step with these guys.
Right. One meal.
Right. Get one thing right. Let's ditch the Coca-Cola and let's change that to something a little bit different. I know you like sugar. Let's change that to juice at least, so it's a little bit healthier. I care a lot about health when it comes to nutrition. What I mean by that is the discussion that we had before when it comes to greens, versus just the whole macronutrient approach. I've spoken to a lot of people who do not give a shit where those macros come from. As long as they're hitting those numbers, they will reach their body composition goals they need. And does that work? Maybe. I don't know. What are the long-term effects of that?
Exactly.
I don't know that either, but I can't imagine
performance is not the same.
I agree. So the guys that I see that perform the best, they don't just eat for the calories. They eat for the health. So, pre-workout, what do we eat? A lot of the times I used to think about, not having food in the stomach, not having, being bloated for the session because you've got a lot of your blood in the digestive system and you need the blood in the muscular system and it's not going to work. But these days our sessions are quite long. With the strength session, my sessions go over 2 hours most of the times. And that's because probably the first hour of that is warming up. A lot of my warm-up drills is about, getting my head in the right state of mind, and just really slowly walking around the gym. So I need to actually have a meal. What does my meals consist of? It's just, protein, carbohydrates. A lot of the times it's beef, rice, spinach. I'm following loosely the recommendations given by Stan Efferding to Hafthor. That's something that's been working very, very successfully.
Sure. Less foods.
Yeah, so it's foods that's
so
easily digestible.
Yeah.
When these guys, it's something that you spoke about with, it was to do with the bloating of the midsection. Like these guys, their guts are huge because they're just they're feeding themselves with up to 10,000 calories per day.
400 pounds. Like people don't get that. It's like, oh, your stomach's big. Yeah, because I'm 400 pounds. I have to eat a lot.
Yeah. So, when you're working with these guys have the experience. Like he'd look at guys that talk about, I eat 10,000 pounds and I'd 10,000 calories per day. And he'd say, there's no way his waist size is too small. He's bullshitting. He's not eating. If you eat that much food, your stomach is out here.
Dude, I was eating 6,000 calories a day on clean food. And it was like, there's no time when you're not like, I don't want to eat anymore. And people are like, oh, your stomach's big. I'm like, yeah, I don't fucking want it to be. If I don't eat these calories, I get smaller. And our obsession with getting bigger, strength training makes a lot of sense. But yeah. So
that's right. It's constantly full of food. So the whole thing with myself as well is easily digestible foods as well, which is what made sense when I was, following a lot of Stan Efferding's protocols. I was working with a dietitian as well who put me on a Fodmap diet. I'm sure you're familiar with that. I used to eat a lot of things that were meant to be healthier. I got into things like sauerkraut because it was meant to be good for my gut health. And one day, I had a good fresh bottle of sauerkraut and I was eating it with just straight from the jar. And my guts, were bloated instantly. And I thought, what the hell? I ran to the toilet thinking I was sick. And I just let out a massive fart. And I thought, what the hell is this? And I came back out again thinking that was really strange. And my guts filled back up again. Anyway, it was just full of gas. And, the dietitian said, this is what were you just eating? And it was the sauerkraut.
Right.
And so she said, you should try this Fodmap diet. So I tried it and I got rid of whatever it was, I'm not, so this was the fermented foods.
Sure, yeah.
Whatever the acronym.
Diet.
Right,
yeah.
low fat FODMAP diet.
It's a long acronym that I don't remember either.
You're right. So there's fermented foods, oligosaccharides, dairies, all of these things. And so I eliminated those things. And for the first time in my life, I was, training without a belly full of gas. Like when you eat the wrong foods and you come under a heavy weight, you're about to load your spine and you want to be using your core optimally, and you're having to hold a fart in.
Right.
It doesn't work right. I've injured my back.
It's like coming up into your throat.
It's not good. So it's a fine line with having the right amount of food in your system to have the right amount of energy, and feeling like you're going to vomit or you're going to shit your pants.
Sure.
So with the nutrition, like pre-workout, I'm not huge on supplementation. I'm huge on food. So like I said,
nothing for your brain, nothing for energy, doing caffeine, anything like that?
Caffeine. I'm huge on caffeine. I don't know if this is, science or not, but my cognitive function is not good without caffeine. And I've done seminars before where I haven't had caffeine and I've found myself where I can't really speak properly until I had my coffee. So I don't know if that's a thing.
Could be, if it is for you, it is, right?
For me, it was. So from that day on, I just don't do anything without coffee. But I also have Caffeine Pre-Workout. That's the only pre-workout that I do have. It's not just from the coffee. It's from actual tablets as well. It's actually a Charles Poliquin supplement. That's my favorite one. Jabstim.
It's got a little phenylalanine in there, and I think a little tyrosine, which
that's makes it, exactly.
There's also dopamine.
Mood enhancers. Yeah, right. So for brain function, I'd like by accident. That's right. Those two things increase it, but for me, it was about the caffeine.
And how about post-workout?
Post-workout, straight to a meal. So you just saw now I had my this is the luxury of my life at the moment. Everything revolves around my training. My training is my business. So my social media, everything that I post, all the great people that come to my gym, it revolves around this. So as soon as I finish my training, my beautiful wife, she bought me a bowl of rice and meat and spinach and
cranberry juice.
And that's my post-workout nutrition. I didn't have a protein shake, which a lot of people are used to doing, and a lot of people ask me, "What's your, do you have protein?" No, I don't do any of the supplements. I just have food, and in a couple of hours, I'll eat something very similar to that again.
Yeah, I agree with that, man. And I think a lot of people are so fixated on like, hey, what supplements do I need to take? And until you have your food straight, what the hell is the benefit? Like,
exactly.
So I always talk about this proverbial pyramid, right? Most people live at the bottom of the pyramid. They're below baseline, right? So we have to how do we bring your body up to baseline first? And that may mean, greens, that may mean magnesium, that may mean sleep, that mean like any of these basic things that allows you to come up to this baseline status. And then from there, we can start looking at, okay, how's your nutrition? Is your nutrition optimized? And if your nutrition, you're eating all your meals, okay, then we can look at, then and only then does a supplement make sense, right? You filled all the holes, all the gaps. And then how do we push performance with some supplements? Maybe it's cognitive performance, maybe it's recovery, maybe it's sleep, any of those things. That's where supplements maybe start to play a small role. But people are just like, hey, I need a pre-workout. I need something to go to sleep. I need something. It's ridiculous.
Get everything right first. Get all the small stuff right first.
Sure, yeah. People are trying to do the things that are easy rather than do the things that are right. And that's
exactly the magic pill.
Very interesting framing. So what's next for you, man? You got a show coming up. You're preparing for a lift, right?
It's crazy what's next for me. The first half of the year, I haven't really even been able to think beyond that. It's just a crazy next 6 months. I've just got seminars. Actually, this weekend I have one that I'm hosting
here in Sydney.
And then every weekend
is that at your gym here?
That's at Base Gym. That's here. Yep. That's going to be a really big one. We've got about 60 people that are going to be attending, and it's not a big space.
One day.
It's going to be 2 days. So that's I'm not sure how I'm going to be able to handle that. That's the most amount of people that I've had in this gym that I've presented in front of before, and I've got to get them all moving around and all that. So it's going to be a little bit of a high stress because it's a new topic that I'm going to be teaching as well, which is program design. Yeah. So the next 3 weeks is going to be seminars. After that, I've got Pro Raw, which is at the Arnold's in Sydney. That's the biggest powerlifting competition of the year for me. That's going to be March 16. Straight after that, we have I've got more seminars after that that I'm going various other states. I'm going to go to Europe in April. Straight after Europe, I come back here and before that, I go to World's Strongest Man in May. That's going to be in America.
Where's that?
That's for I don't know exactly where, but like I said, they don't tell us all the information, whether it's the events or the exact dates.
You think they would sell tickets?
They don't sell tickets because it's a TV show. So it's not like a lot of the other events where they are trying to sell it out. They don't want people knowing because they don't want a huge amount of people attending.
Okay, because then people know the result.
Well, that's changing. They realized that due to social media, they're not going to change a lot of that. So they had, a lot of the strongman signing waivers saying you're not allowed to release, the results. But nowadays they let them because it gets out anyway. But it's not a show like that. They don't sell tickets to that show. It's just a TV show, and that's how they make their money. But we don't know much about that event up until about 6 to 8 weeks before that. So that's going to be, so far, the tentative dates is mid-May. After that, we move gyms. So
yeah, your wife was telling me.
Yeah, so this building's getting knocked down.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that's the end of our lease, and we've got another space that we own, and that's going to be a different side of the Harbour Bridge. If you know Sydney, in the city is one side of the Harbour Bridge, and a lot of people that live around there think that everywhere else is way too far. So we're on the other side of the Harbour Bridge, which is literally a 2-minute drive.
Right.
So that's we're in North Sydney at the moment. So we're going to go to the right part of the city, and that's going to be in June. So that's going to be a huge step for us. for many reasons. We're completely going to be restructuring our business. A lot of our business used to be based on when we opened up this gym, we thought about, creating a huge membership gym and having, I don't know how many members we planned on having here, but we've culled that right back. The members that we have here, we don't really want to sell membership or personal training. That's not where we're making most of our money from. Right. Most of our money comes from, online education, creating content. So that's what our whole gym is going to be based around. It's going to be based around the way I train my athletes.
The new gym.
Yeah. So we've already got a lot of the equipment. We're going to be building a few more bits and pieces, but it's going to be based around, it's more of an education center, which is going to be our next step for 2019. So that's going to take up the first half of this year. And I'm really, really excited about that. It's a lot of the things I've never really planned for anything in the last probably 5 years of my life. Everything has just kind of come. I won't say by accident, I've been as active as you could be in the industry, and things just happen. And, the amount of travel, last year we went to Europe 4 times. That's the other side of the world for us. So it's a big thing, the first 6 months of the year, I don't even have time to think. So it's very exciting. It's a good thing to have.
Very, very cool, dude. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. I've been, wanting to speak to you for so many different reasons besides you picking my brain. I'd love to, get the opportunity to spend time with you and ask you more about bodybuilding and how it relates to what I'm doing, because there's so many different crossovers that I had no idea that it was that similar. But success is success, right?
Mm-hmm. So like I said, we can talk about that later, but I'll be back here, man. I'll definitely be back in Sydney, and I'll definitely come and hang out with you, man.
Awesome. I'd really love that, man.
Sebastian Oreb, thank you so much for your time, brother. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Loved it.
Thank you so much for tuning into Muscle Intelligence. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to share it with at least one person you know. Make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an episode. This podcast is for information purposes only. The statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Ben Pekulski and the producers, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements or advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.